Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you are in this world, it'll be one time or another. And all I need to say is that you're all welcome at the World Storytelling Cafe. We're really excited about it. We've got brilliant tellers for the rest of the week on Thursday and every Monday and Thursday evening from now on. If everything works according to plan, we'll have storytellers from Morocco. And tomorrow we've got Pauline Cordner and Baden Prince. But for right now, you've got me. And I'm going to start with this story from Serbia. And it's the Golden Ram. And it's from way back in time, when mountains were taller and rivers were deeper and forests were thicker. And you're thinking, there's no such things as golden rams or golden fleeces, but let me tell you this. Way back when Jason and the Argonauts were pootling around the Mediterranean, they got to Georgia, and in Georgia they panned for gold by getting wooden frames and filling them full of sheep's fleeces. And they put them in the river, and at the end of the day they would be pulled out, and the fleeces would be laid along the riverbank. And on a good day, they'd pull lumps of gold out of the fleeces. On a really good day, the centre fleece would be covered in of fine gold dust. Well, you imagine Jason and the Argonauts, bunch of roughneck sailors, rolling down the riverbank, saw them, whoa, golden fleece. So they're all sitting back in Greece, having a cup of coffee, and said, never guess what we saw in Georgia, golden fleece. Everyone's running around the town going, you never guess what Jason and his crew saw in Georgia, golden fleece. Now, there's some writer like me stuck up top of a mountain with writer's block thinking, what am I going to write now? And he hears the story. And he thinks, I'll have some of that. And he writes it in the story. So you never know where fact finishes and fiction begins. And that has nothing to do with this story whatsoever. This is more a story of how men get into trouble and women get them out of it. And like I said, it's from a long time ago. And there was a hunter. And every day he would go into the forest and he would bring his family food, sometimes a pheasant, sometimes hare if they were very lucky, a deer. And this particular day, out in the forest, when out from between the trees came a golden ram. He's about to put his gun to his shoulder and shoot it, when the ram charged at him, knocked him down and killed him. Well, I was telling this story in Texas. And there was a 15-year-old in the front row. And I went, and the ram charged at him and killed him. And he went, cool. Well, the hunter's body laid there for a week until his neighbours found him. And his neighbours took the body back and gave it to his wife, and his wife buried the body, and she took the gun and hung it over the fireplace. Well, they had a young son, and he was told, whatever you do, don't touch the gun. But you know what it's like when you're told not to do something. It is the very thing you have to do. So as soon as he was tall enough, he reached up, he took down that gun and went out in the forest. Out from between the trees came the golden ram. I killed your father, and I shall kill you, said the ram. I think not, said the boy. And he put the gun to his shoulder and shot the ram between the eyes. And he took out his knife and he cut off that golden fleece. He went back home. Well, news of that golden fleece spread far and wide. And soon the king got to hear of it, and he told the boy to bring it to him, for he wanted to see what wondrous beasts were running around in his forest. And when he saw it, he said, boy, how much will you sell that to me for? And the boy said, I can't sell you this, for this is the fleece of the ram that killed my father. Well, the king would have been happy enough with that, but he had a chief advisor, a chief minister, who happened to be the boy's uncle, and no friend of the boy's, but his mortal enemy. Well, if he won't sell it to you, set him a task. And if he can't complete that task in 7 days, whack, off with his head. Very well, boy, you've got 7 days to grow me a vineyard. And the 7th day you've got to take a vine heavy with grapes. Set it before me. If not, whack, off with your head. Well, he went running home, he went, Mum, I've got to grow a vineyard in 7 days, and the 7th day I can take a vine heavy with grapes, set it before the king, if not, I'm going to my head cut off. He said, I told you not to touch the gun. Well, getting no sympathy at home, he went out in the forest, and he sat on a rock, and he cried, and he cried, and he cried. When out from between the trees came the most beautiful girl he had ever seen in all of his life. Well, he didn't want to look soft, did he? So he dried his eyes, did that sort of blokey wiggle of the shoulders, and went, "Here, who are you?" He said, "I am the Maid of the Woods, and you are in trouble." He said, "I know I'm in trouble. I've got to grow a vineyard in 7 days, and the 7th day I've got to take a vine heavy with grapes, send it before the king. If not, I'm going to have my head cut off." She said, "Don't worry about it." "What do you mean, don't worry about it?" "Go to the king, ask him where he wants his vineyard, lay down that place, arms crossed across your chest, sprig of basil on your chest, go to sleep. When you wake up, the vineyard will be growing around you. On the 7th day, take a vine heavy with grapes, set it before the king." Well, he went back and he told his mum exactly what the girl had said. She said, "Well, you might as well do it. You're going to have your head cut off anyway." So he went to the king. He asked where he wanted his vineyard planted, laid down that place, arms crossed across his chest, sprig of basil on his chest, went to sleep. When he woke up, the vineyard was growing around him. On the 7th day, he took a vine heavy with grapes, set it before the king. "Well, obviously, that was far too easy," said the wicked uncle, the king's adviser. "Set him a second task, and if he can't do that in 7 days, off with his head." "Very well, boy. You've got 7 days to build me a palace of elephant's tusks. On the 7th day, you just got to show me a completed palace." Well, it was before the ivory ban, you understand. Well, he went. He said, "Mum, I've got 7 days to build the palace of elephant's tusks. I'm not going to be head cut off." She said, "Don't worry about it. Go to the woods and see your girlfriend." He went to the woods, sat in the rock. Out came the Maid of the Woods. She said, "You're in trouble again." He said, "I know I'm in trouble. I've got to build a palace of elephant's tusks in 7 days if not going to be head cut off." She said, "Don't worry about it. Go to the king, ask him where he wants his palace built, lay down that place, arms crossed across your chest, sprig of basil on your chest, go to sleep. When you wake up, the palace will be built around you." And that is entirely wrong. But that is the way of stories. Sometimes we just get it wrong. Because what she actually said was, go to the king, ask him for 2 ships, 25 of his finest carpenters, 300 gallons of wine and 300 gallons of brandy. Sail to such and such a place where the mountains meet at the sea and the river flows in between. Dam the river. In the lake behind the dam, pour the wine and the brandy. The elephants will come down at night. They'll drink from the lake. They'll be a little bit dozy. They'll go to sleep. Get the 25 carpenters that you asked the king for to cut off their tusks. Take the tusks to where the king wants his palace built. Go to sleep. When you wake up, the palace will be built around you." And everything happened exactly as the girl said. "Well, obviously, he's a sorcerer," said the wicked uncle, the king's adviser. "Set him a 3rd task, and if he does that, cut off his head anyway." Well, the boy didn't even bother to go home. He went straight to the woods. He sat in the rock. Out came the Maid of the Woods. "You're in trouble again. Can't you stay out of trouble for 2 minutes?" He said, "Look here, I know I'm in trouble. Stop telling me I'm in trouble. I've got to go to a land. I don't even know where it is. I've got to bring back a princess that lives there. And you tell me I'm in trouble? Of course I'm in trouble. I don't know what the princess looks like. I don't know where the land is. What am I supposed to do?" He said, "This is the complicated part, so listen carefully. Go to the king. Ask him for a big ship. Divide that ship into 12 shops. Have in each of those shops the finest of goods, silks, perfumes, jewels. Set sail. On the way you'll meet a man with an eagle. Pay him whatever he asks for the eagle. Take a feather from the eagle's tail and let the eagle go. Next, you'll meet a man with a golden carp. Pay him whatever he asks for the golden carp. Take a scale from the skin of the golden carp and let the carp go. Next, you'll meet a man with a dove. Pay him whatever he asks for the dove. Take a feather from the wing of the dove and let the dove go. Next, you'll reach such and such a land. The people of that land will come down. They will see your fine goods. News will reach the princess. She will come down with her ladies in waiting. When she reaches the 7th shop, set sail. When she reaches the 12th shop, she will realise she is in the middle of the ocean. She will not be a happy girl. She will take a message to her father. She would take a bird from her shoulder. She will write a message to her father. She will tie it to the bird's leg. She will send the bird to her father. When that happens, take the eagle's feather and burn it. The eagle will come. It will catch the bird. The bird will not reach her father. When she realises this, she will take a small pebble and cast it over the side of the ship, and the ship will be stilled. It will not move. Well, when that happens, take the scale of the golden carp and burn it. The golden carp will come, it will swallow the pebble, and the ship will move. When she realises this, she will stop the ship for a second time, tell you she will not allow it to move until she has in her possession some of the elixir, the liquid of life itself. When that happens, take the feather of the dove and burn it. The dove will come. You'll put a small flask in beak, it will fly off, it will come back with that flask full of the elixir of life itself. You may then go home. And everything happened exactly as the girl said. And the first off the ship was the princess, and the second off the ship were the ladies in waiting, and the third off the ship were the 12 handsome young men, and last of all was the boy himself. And as he stepped off, the king shouted, "Seize him! Off with his head! Whack! Head to one side, body to the other." Well, as it happened, the princess had got to quite like the boy in the course of the story. And, so where's the boy that brought me here? There he is, said the king, head to one side, body to the other. Well, she picked up his head, it's okay, it's just dripping a bit. And she put it back on his shoulders, and she put some of the elixir of life, and put some on his eyelids, some on his lips, and some around the cut on his neck. He was as good as new. Well, it is said that anyone who's been dead and is alive again knows all things. Now, for all you sitting at home, working on your schoolwork on your computers, this is not a shortcut to doing your homework. Do not try it. But the king was one of those people who hated anyone who had anything he hadn't. "I want to know everything too," he said. "Cut off my head." "I'm not sure that's such a good idea, Your Majesty," said everyone. I'm the king. I'm the king. If I say cut off my head, cut off my head." "Oh, very well. Whack! Head to one side, body to the other." "All right, girl, do your stuff," they say to the princess. "You must be joking," she said. And of course she sent a message to her father, saying she wished to marry the young man. And her father sent a message back saying only if the people of that land elected her queen and the boy king. And that's exactly what they did. And there was a great coronation and a great wedding. And there was masses to eat and even more to drink. And of course, had you been there, each and every one of you would have been invited. Why, Ben, story ends. Whoa. Where should we go now? I think we're going on a little journey to India. And the story about a mouse. And this is from way back in time when all the animals could talk to each other and chickens still had teeth. And there was a merchant and he was leading an ox down the road. And on the back of the ox was a huge sack of peas. And the ox was rocking from side to side. It's a rough road. And the sack of peas fell off. And the merchant tried to pick him up, but it was just too heavy. And he's looking round for some help. And he sees a mouse coming down the road. "Excuse me, mouse. Can you help me on the back of this ox with this sack of peas?" Well, the mouse thought there was nothing strange about a talking merchant. So between them, they got the sack of peas and they lifted it on the back of the ox. And the merchant was so pleased, he gave the mouse 1 pea. And one had fallen out on the road, so the mouse had 2 peas. And the mouse didn't trust the merchant in the first place. He'd already taken one, so he had 3 peas. And he went home and he planted them in front of his hole. And he said, "Look, unless there's 3 fine green shoots by the morning, I'll cut you up and I'll feed you to the ox." And you'd be sure the next morning when he woke up, there were 3 fine green shoots. He said, look, unless there's 3 fine flowers by the morning, I'll cut you up and I'll feed you to the ox. And you can be sure the next morning when he woke up, there were 3 fine flowers. He said, look, unless there's 3 fine fat pods with fat peas inside by the morning, I'll cut you up and I'll feed you to the ox. And you can be sure the next morning when he woke up, there were 3 fine fat pods with fat peas inside. And he ate, and he ate, and he ate. And he got fatter and fatter and fatter. Now, if you're a mouse and you had a bit of flab on you, everyone would think you were really good looking. And he's walking down the road and he's whacking his flab from one side to the other, ba-doing, 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 ba-doing. And down the road came another mouse. He said, whoa, how come you got so big? He said, come home and I'll show you. And they ran round and they ate and they ate and they ate and they ate. And she ran down the hole. He ran down behind her. He got stuck halfway down. So he went to the carpenter. He said, carpenter, carpenter, cut me down the side so I can get down my hole. And the carpenter said, look, I've got to make new furniture for everybody before the lockdown. I haven't got time to deal with the mouse. Go away. So he went to the king. He said, King, tell carpenter to cut me down to size so I can get down my hole. And we can all join in. There's only 2 words to shout out. Hole and away. And the king said, look, I've got a whole country to look after here. I haven't got time to deal with a mouse. Go away. I can almost hear you shouting there. So the queen said, Queen, leave King won't tell carpenter to cut me down to size so I can get down my hole. And the queen said, I'm not going to leave the king for a mouse. Do you mind? Go So he went to the snake. He went, snake, bite, queen won't leave king won't tell carpenter to cut me down to size so I can get down my hole. And the snake said, look, it's the first hot day for months. I just want to lay here basking in the sun. Go away. So he went to the stick. He went stick, beat snake won't bite, queen won't leave, king won't tell carpenter to cut me down to size so I can get down my hole. And the stick said, look, I spent all day beating a thief. I haven't got any energy left. Do you mind? Go away. So he went to the furnace. You know what a furnace is? Really hot fire. It's what we used to have in this country when we had industry. He said, furnace, stick, won't beat snake won't bite, queen won't leave, king won't tell carpenter to cut me down to size so I can get down my hole. And the furnace said, look, I'm cooking the king's dinner here. Do you mind? Go away. So he went to the ocean. He went ocean, put out furnace, won't burn, stick, won't beat snake won't bite, queen won't leave, king won't tell carpenter to cut me down to size so I can get down my hole. And the ocean said, look, the tide's high, the fish are jumping, the sun's in the sky, go away. So he went to the elephant. He went, elephant, drink, ocean, won't put out furnace, won't burn, stick, won't beat snake won't bite, queen won't leave, king won't tell carpenter to cut me down to size so I can get down my hole. And the elephant burped really loud. Said, look, I've just drunk a lake. I haven't got room for an ocean. Go away. So he went to the vine. That's what used to grow around this stick to make it this funny shape. He went, vine, strangle elephant, won't drink, ocean, won't put out furnace, won't burn, stick, won't beat snake won't bite, queen won't leave, king won't tell carpenter to cut me down to size so I can get down my hole. And the vine said, look, I'm stuck to this tree. I couldn't help you even if I wanted to. Go away. So he went to the scythe. You know what a scythe is? It's a really long knife on the end of a stick that they used to use for cutting the grass with. He said, scythe, scythe, cut down vine, vine won't strangle elephant, elephant won't drink ocean, ocean won't put out furnace, furnace won't burn stick, stick won't beat snake, snake won't bite queen, queen won't leave king, king won't tell carpenter to cut me down to size so I can get down my hole. Well, fortunately for my breath and your patience, the scythe is always sharp, and it said, okay. Now see if you can keep up with me on this. I'll say it very slowly and just shout out the words as I go. The scythe began to cut down the vine. The vine began to strangle the elephant. The elephant began to drink the ocean. The ocean began to put out the, not fire, but furnace. The furnace began to burn the stick. The stick began to beat the snake. The snake began to bite the queen. The queen began to leave the king. And the king told the carpenter to cut the, think of it, really important to hold on to a central character in a story. Yeah, the mouse. Down to size, and the mouse got down its hole. Well, we're going to really slow boat, and we'll stop off in, let me see where. Ooh, yes. We'll stop off in Ireland. And this is one of my favourite stories, and it's a favourite character. And it's the story of Harry Roche. Now, Harry Roche lived with her mum, with her two sisters. And her two sisters were beautiful. But Harry Roche was covered in hair from the top of her head to the bottom of her feet. And they lived out in the middle of a forest. And the two beautiful sisters turned to their mother and said, Mother, we are never going to meet anyone in the middle of this forest. Give us a cake, that one you're baking in the oven, and we'll be off to seek our fortune. Well, Mum said, take half the cake and go with my blessing, or the whole cake and go without. They said, forget the blessing, we're hungry. Give us the whole cake. And the two girls set off down the road. Well, Harry Roche, for that was Harry one's name, turned around to Mum and said, my two sisters are beautiful, but they don't have a grain of sense between them. Give us half that griddle cake you're baking in the oven, and I'll be off to look after them. And she, of course, she was given the whole cake, and she set off down the road. Well, she soon caught up with her sisters. But you know, it's like, sometimes you'll be out with your friends and someone joins you and they're really embarrassing and you just wish they'd go away. Or worse still, you join people and you realise they don't want you around. And you're just trying to find a way to leave without looking stupid. It was a bit like that with Harry Roche and her two sisters. Harry Roche said, the two sisters thought, no one is going to speak to us with this hairy creature next to us. There was nothing nice about the sisters. They just tied her up to a tree and they set off down the road. Well, before they could blink, Harry Roche's walking next to them again. This time, they dug a big hole. They put her in the bottom of the hole. They covered the hole with earth. They set off down the road. Before they could blink, Harry Roche's walking next to them again. This time, she's got clods of earth sticking out of her hair, worms crawling through it. They thought, well, it's getting dark. Maybe no one will notice, and we haven't the faintest idea where we're going to stop tonight. Maybe she can find us somewhere. So the three sisters carried on together till they came to a great castle. They knocked on the front door of that castle, and it opened with a creak and its squeak. And there stood a great giant. "Yes, girls, can I do something for you?" Well, as it happened, me and my sisters, we're very tired. Have you got somewhere where we can stay? Well, upstairs is a great bed, and in that great bed are my three daughters. You may share the bed with them. "Thank you very much," said Harry Roach, and they went upstairs. But before they went to sleep, Harry Roach took the diamond necklaces off the giant's daughters' necks and put them on her and her sisters' necks. And she took the hair necklaces off her and her sisters' necks and put them on the giant's daughters' necks. Well, in the middle of the night, the giant turned to his wife and said, "Those three guests will make fine meat pies. Mind you, we're going to have to singe that hairy one first. Servant, pop upstairs and chop off their heads." "Well, it's dark up there," said the servant. "How will I know who's who?" "Well, it's easy," said the giant. "My daughters have diamond necklaces. Our guests have hair necklaces." Well, you can imagine his surprise the next morning when he saw who came down the stairs, thanked him kindly for his hospitality, and set off down the road. Well, when the giant realised what had happened, he was furious. He started chasing Harry Roach, and the two sisters screamed, and Harry Roach picked up a sister. It's absolutely true. She picked up a sister under each arm. She was running so fast there were sparks coming off her heels and hitting the giant in the face. And they ran till they came to a river, and she was across the river in one bound and in the land of the King of Spain. "When shall I see you again?" said the giant. "When I have business with you," said Harry Roach. Well, the three sisters carried on together till they came to the palace of the King of Spain himself. And the eldest sister, she fell in love with the eldest son. The King of Spain, he had three sons. He fell in love with her. The second sister, she fell in love with the second son. He fell in love with her. Harry Roach, she fell in love with the youngest son. He wasn't so sure. And the King of Spain turned around and said, "It's a fine thing you did for your eldest sister. Now, if I should happen to have the talking golden quilt that sits on the giant's bed, your eldest sister could marry my eldest son." Well, Harry Roach, she's back at the giant's castle. It's the middle of the night. She's tugging away at the talking golden quilt. "Who's pulling me?" said the quilt. "It's myself," said Harry Roach. "What's all that noise?" said the giant. Someone's pulling me off," said the quilt. "Who's pulling you off?" said the quilt. Said the giant. "It's myself," said the quilt. "Well, if myself doesn't be quiet, myself be put on the fire." The quilt couldn't say a thing. Harry Roach grabbed the quilt, started running towards the river. When the giant realised what happened, he was furious. He started chasing Harry Roach. When he was on the hilltop, she was in the valley, and when she was on the hilltop, he was in the valley, and they ran till they came to the river, and she was across the river in one bound and in the land of the King of Spain. "When shall I see you again?" said Harry Roach. "When I have business with you." Well, there was a wedding, and she gave the talking golden quilt to the King of Spain, and there was a great wedding. And no one took much notice of Harry Roach apart from the old travelling woman that occasionally visited her in the cottage. And when the wedding was over, the King of Spain said, "It's a fine thing you did for your oldest sister. Now, if I should happen to have the sword of light that hangs over the giant's bed, your second sister could marry my second son." Hirochi is back at the palace, and she's hiding up the chimney. And the giant's wife is cooking a great cauldron of porridge, and she gets a whole sack of salt. Hirochi gets a whole sack of salt and pours it into the porridge and stirs it up. When the porridge is ready, it's set before the giant, and the giant starts eating it. And he was the sort of man that didn't like to complain about his food, so he ate it all up. But we all know what happens if you eat too much salt. You get incredibly thirsty. And the giant went to bed, but in the middle of the night he woke up, and he went, "Servant, servant, go to the well and draw me the biggest bucket of water you can find, for I have on me a great thirst." Well, the servant went out in the yard, and Harry Roach's hiding behind a wall, and as the servant passes, you get a whole handful of dust and throws it in the servant's face. Servant went running back, said, Giant, Giant, it's so dark out there, I can't see my finger in front of my nose, and there's hailstones coming out the sky the size of frogs and hit me in the face. Oh, stop whinging, said the giant. And he reached up and he took down the sword of light and he gave it to the servant. Now, use this as a torch to find your way to the well. Well, the servant went out to the well and he laid the sword of light down next to the well. And he let down the bucket, and he's pulling up the bucket when Hirochi reached round, grabbed the sword of light, grabbed the servant by the hair and said, back to the castle with you, or your head'll be parting company with your body. He didn't need telling twice. Well, when the giant realised what had happened, he was furious. He started chasing Hirochi. There was all that business with hills and valleys, and they ran till they came to the river, and she was across the river in one bound and in the land of the King of Spain. When shall I see you again, said the giant. When I have business with you, said Hirochi. Well, Hirochi carried on till she came to the palace of the King of Spain and gave him the sword of light. And again there was a great wedding, and again no one took much notice of Hirochi, apart from the old travelling woman that occasionally visited her in a cottage. When the wedding was over, the King of Spain said, it's a fine thing you did for your youngest son. Now, if I should happen to have the golden bells hanging round the neck of the giant's pacorn, baby billy goat, you could marry my youngest son. I'm not sure your youngest son wants to marry me, said Hirochi. Anyone who can be that kind to her sister, said the youngest son, I want to marry. Well, if you think she got to the castle fast the first two times, she was fast to this. And she was in the courtyard and she was wondering how she could lead that baby billy goat without the bells ringing. And she spied an elder tree and she broke down the branch, took the soft middle of that branch and she stuck it in the bells. And she led that baby billy goat out. And she got to the middle of the courtyard when everything fell out the bells and the bells started ringing and the giant ran up and he grabbed Hirochi. Now I have you, he said, and if you were me, what would you do? Well, if I was you, said Hirochi, I'd put me in a sack and I would hang that sack from the rafters and I would leave my wife guarding the sack and I would go out into the woods with my servants and I would cut big clubs and I would come back and I would beat me till I was cut and bruised all over. That is what I'll do, said the giant. He put Hirochi in a sack, hung her from the rafters and left his wife guarding the sack, and he went out with his servant to cut big clubs to come back to beat her till she was cut and bruised all over. Soon as he was at the door, Hirochi started laughing and whistling and singing. Giant's wife said, you're crazy, you're going to be beaten till you're cut and bruised all over, and now you're laughing and you're whistling and you're singing. If you were in this sack, you'll be laughing and whistling too. But in this sack are diamonds and rubies such as you have never seen. I don't believe you, said the giant's wife. Oh, please yourself, said Hirochi. All right, let me have a look. Oh, no, you'll only want some, said Hirochi. Oh, please, let me have a look. All right, let me down. If it'll keep you quiet. Well, the sack's let down. Hirochi gets out the sack. Giant's wife gets in the sack. Hirochi pulls the sack back up, leaves it hanging from the rafters, starts running towards the river. Giant came in with his servant, started beating the sack. Ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ooh. It sounds like the mistress, said the servant. Don't be silly, said the giant. Ooh, ah. And then he looked down, he saw the empty chair. He thought, I'm in a bit of trouble now. Well, he ran 10 times round that castle before he got to the front door in front of his wife. And he ran till he came to the river, just in time to see Hirochi leaping over the river in one bound. How shall I catch you now, said the giant. Well, I suggest, said Hirochi, you get on your hands and knees and you drink the river dry. Well, I don't know whether he's still there, but he was last time I saw him. But back at the palace of the King of Spain, there was to be one last wedding. And Hirochi just had one request, that she should travel in a separate carriage with the old travelling woman to the church. And they got to the church and the door was opened. And there was no travelling woman. And instead of Hirochi was the most beautiful girl you've ever seen in all of your life, with the same eyes as Hirochi. When she was asked her story, apparently when she was just a babe, a spell had been put upon her that had covered her in hair. And the only way that spell could be broken was if someone agreed to marry her exactly as she was. And that the youngest son had agreed to do. And as for the old travelling woman, she was her guardian angel and no longer needed. And as for those 3 marriages, one was happy and 2 were not. And I'll leave you to guess which was which. Oh, well, I think for our final story, we'll go north to Lapland. And there's Miko the fox. Miko's the naughtiest fox in the whole world. He's always playing tricks, especially on his friend Otso the bear. And on this particular day, it's snowing. And it snowed, and it snowed, and it snowed. And when I talked to my friends in Romania yesterday, apparently it was still snowing there. And the snow got thicker and thicker and thicker. And Miko thought, I'll have some fun. And he went out and he dug a big hole in the snow, and he put in it. He just had his nose sticking out, and he waited, and he waited, and he waited, but nothing happened. So he waited, and he waited, and he waited, but nothing happened. So he waited, and he waited, and he waited. And suddenly he heard in the distance a bell, and he saw a reindeer coming round the corner with a bell round its neck, and that reindeer was pulling a sleigh, and on that sleigh was a reindeer man, and that sleigh was pulling 4 sledges. And on the front sledge there was wooden toys, and on the second sledge there were furs, and on the third sledge were logs for the fire. But on the 4th sledge, the final sledge, that sledge was full of fish. And if there's one thing foxes like, it's fish. He thought, I'll have some of that. So he went out and he laid in the road, stiff as a board. And the reindeer man looked down and he thought, there's a frozen fox in the road. I could sell that at the market. And he picked it up and he put Miko on the sled full of wooden toys. And he set off down the road, and Miko rolled, and he rolled, and he rolled. And he fell off the ground with a thud. Reindeer man picked him up, put him on the sled full of furs, and he rolled, and he rolled, and he rolled. And he fell down onto the ground with a thud. This time he's put on the sled full of logs. The reindeer man set off down the road, and what did Miko do? He rolled, and he rolled, and he rolled. And he fell off onto the ground with a thud. This time he was put on the sled full of, you all know what it is, the fish, which was exactly where he wanted to be. So this time when the reindeer man set off down the road, he leant forward and he chewed through that rope, that sled into the one in front. So when the reindeer man got to market, he had a sled full of wooden toys, a sled full of furs, and a sled full of logs for the fire. But he didn't have a sled full of fish. He went back down the road and there was an empty sled. But in the middle of the forest, there was Miko, licking his lips, looking forward to a nice fish supper, when along came his friend, Otso the bear. And Otso in those days, bears had big, beautiful, fluffy tails. It was so beautiful that Otso never looked in front of him when he was walking. He'd just look over his shoulder and think, oh, what a beautiful tail I've got. When he smelt something, you know what he smelt? Obviously, the fish. Miko, where'd you get that fish? Well, to tell you the truth, said Miko, I went down the river and I took my little saw and I cut a hole in the ice and I let my tail down into cold, cold water. And when I stood up, it was covered in fish, and that's the fish. Why don't you try? I think I will, said Otso. And he went down the river and he cut a hole in the ice and he let his tail down, his big, beautiful tail, into cold, cold water. And he waited, and he waited, and he waited, but nothing happened. So he waited, and he waited, and he waited, but nothing happened. So he waited, and he waited, and he went, and he thought, I've had enough of this. And it's getting cold, but he went to stand up. Oh no, he was frozen onto the ice. So he pulled, and he pulled, and he pulled, but nothing happened. So he pulled, and he pulled, and he pulled, but nothing happened. So he pulled, and he pulled, and he pulled, and pop! His big, beautiful tail pulled off into the ice. And if you look at the bears this very day, all they've got is that little short stub of a tail. And it's all Miko, the fox's, fault. Wire Ben, stories end. And that's all from me for today. But 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, you will have the magnificent Pauline Cordner all the way from Aberdeen. Bye-bye, folks.